Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Data Dispatch. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day. Let's talk about what we can be expecting in the markets this week. What we're seeing in terms of futures opening up right now a little bit lower in terms of we have some uncertainty, of course, with the tariff legal limbo. We have Trump coming up with some remarks we'll be talking about this week. We're going to be having a jobs report. On top of that, we're also having Jerome Powell from the Fed. He's going to be giving some remarks. A lot of pressure on for cutting rates. That is on the headline right now in terms of what the market kind of wants the Fed to do, and especially the administration wants the Fed to do. So let's break down all the stocks that we've been talking about. Palantir near these all-time highs. Could it be gearing up to 150 here, along with some of the other stocks that we've been keeping on the watch list? So, of course, hit that like button, subscribe for daily videos, and let's get into the juicy news that we can prepare for this week. It's probably going to be a crazy week because the whole month of May, this whole 2025 has been a complete roller coaster. We never know what the administration is going to come out to say. We never know what's going to be happening with the tariffs, and that's just continuing on. So where we see Palantir is closed at 131, had a great green candle, lots of buying pressure. We saw this squeeze up here to 7.73% in gain on Friday, and where we see it specifically opening right now is down about $1.60. We see the futures, the overall markets opening up slightly lower, so Palantir is just kind of experiencing that same drift. Now, usually I don't use a lot of overnight market momentum or kind of positioning to really judge on what's going to happen in terms of the trading day, just because the volume just doesn't match. But what we're seeing here, remember, on Friday, Trump tapping into Palantir to compile data, expanding Palantir's work with the government. We know some people are viewing this as not a good thing. Some people are viewing this as a very good thing for Palantir. But nonetheless, in terms of what your views are on the actual move, Palantir is continuing to secure some very large contracts with the government and continuing to expand their business. Palantir, if we get a lot of positive momentum into the market, if we see this break past this 130 resistance area, a blow through all-time highs here, if this holds or even consolidates here, this is where Palantir could gear up to that $150 zone, that price discovery zone, that FOMO. Once that takes action, everybody starts piling money in because they're thinking, hey, where's Palantir going to go? We don't know. How high is it going to go? It keeps rising. The valuation's insane, but it keeps rising. The valuation, that's all we hear. We know it's a highly valued company. Palantir knows that. Investors know that, institutional, retail. If you've been saying that for the last few years, just think of all the gains that you've missed out on. So Palantir sitting at 131 still has room to run, of course, making a big move into the AI software solutions and is a leading competitor. We know that. What we've seen talking about the general market here, Trump comes out saying that the courts somehow rule against us on tariffs, which is not expected. That would allow other countries to hold our nation hostage with their anti-American tariffs that would be used against us. This would mean the economic ruination of the United States of America. So coming out here just with a strong position and statement saying that if the courts rule against the tariffs, then that is going to be, all these other countries are going to take control of the United States of America. Nonetheless, in terms of this tweet, and this comes from Amit posting this, this is just more what we see uncertainty in terms of the legal mumbo jumbo kind of rigmarole that's happening with the tariffs. So the question is, how is the market pricing this in right now? What we do know, what people are calling with the taco trade, is that I think the market is starting to settle down and absorb some of the volatility that we're seeing with these tariffs that are going up and down. Kind of just waiting for actual deals to be made and kind of pricing in, okay, instead of hearing all this noise, what's going to be the end conclusion for the tariffs? That's what the market is kind of sitting at right now. Everybody's talking about the fact, and the market's probably pricing this in, I can kind of see this perspective, that the fact that there's probably going to be about 10% tariffs across the board, it may be about higher 30% for China. One thing that I do like is the market's kind of getting, ahead of all this political noise and just staying kind of, diligent to what it needs to do. And that's just react in an objective manner and say, at the end of the day, what are these tariffs likely going to be? The market's going to price that in. And hey, if for some reason it's not, then we're going to see fluctuations, either, of course, to the bullish or the bearish side. But the fact that the market is starting to avoid or kind of take some of this noise with a grain of salt, I do like, because it helps the market, not stay as not as volatile, not seeing these huge swings in terms of emotion trading, bringing more concreteness to the market. That's what we're looking for, trying to see some stability here, because the market's at an interesting point. We'll be talking about it in a second here, especially as these tariffs, like I said, are in this legal limbo following these rulings saying, hey, you can't do that, but then the appeals are reinstating those reciprocal tariffs. So what we do know, the secretary came out suggested that Trump and China's president, they could actually be discussing trade as early as this week, though there's actually been no talks on a specific or an official date. And his comments come as trade tensions between the U.S., and China, we of course have ramped up. We saw Trump coming out saying that they violated the agreement. Nonetheless, I think what we've typically seen in the past is when Trump and when these actual big political leaders meet, they always typically come out with some positive news saying, hey, we made good strides. We're making, the next steps. We're taking advantages of, these new type of negotiations. Typically, they're always good things. That's where I'm going to stand at right now, unless there's going to be some big falling out between them. But maybe this will clear some of this whole, violated the agreement. Maybe this will clear some of that noise, and the market's really going to be listening to that on top of what we're having with the market. Jobs report coming out on Friday. It's going to be coming as the Federal Reserve faces pressure, as we know, to lower those rates. We've even seen that from the administration. And we also, on Monday, we're going to be getting some remarks here from the Fed chair and the Chicago Fed president scheduled to speak. So on top of that, we're going to see job openings coming on Tuesday. Wednesday, we'll see some ADP employment, S&P final U.S. services. We're also going to be seeing a few earnings like from Dollar Tree, Five Below, Thor Industries, and like I said, of course, that employment report is going to be coming out on May. So jobs report, on top of that, Fed facing pressure. We could expect some more volatility this week, but nonetheless, considering that May had a pretty positive month, S&P 500 up about 6%. The question is, are we going to be entering into this bull rally for the summer? Right now, where the S&P 500 index specifically closed at here at the 5,900, this is an important zone, and where the S&P has had major swings just in the previous week here. We're probably going to possibly see, if we see kind of this bullishness maintain here, if we don't see an immediate swing, that push up to the 6,000. There's going to be some resistance there, probably at that 6,000. If it's able to hold, consolidate, break through that 6,000, that's where you're going to see the test of all-time highs. However, if you see an immediate drop and no below that 5,900, that's where the bearish momentum might possibly take over. You're going to see puts coming in, looking at the mid 5,800s, if that does break that support level. So we're kind of at that zone, kind of that sketchy zone right now. We're at those all-time high zones for a lot of these stocks. So the big question is, if pullback risk for downside potential is high, but at the same time, if there is a breakthrough those all-time highs, a lot of these stocks are going to be entering into more of those price discovery modes. And with the market coming down, opening up about $2 lower right now in the overnight hours, just looking at the VU right here, NVIDIA coming down about 1.7. Right, specifically looking at some of the stocks that we do have on the radar. Hood is near these all-time highs. We've seen some consolidation here, kind of in the mid-60s, at 66 right now. If we see a breakthrough here, a lot of people are starting to question with a possible S&P 500 inclusion. The announcement is this Friday. With that, if Hood gets included into the S&P 500, that's where you could see a big breakthrough here. That is going to be a bigger rumor that's going to be traded here likely this week. But if it gets past this is past these all-time high levels, that's where you're going to see possibly the move to 75, 80 in terms of that price discovery mode. Hood is doing a lot of great things, being very innovative and offering a lot of attractiveness to newer investors. And think of the younger generation, they're probably not going to be setting up with financial advisors and stuff. We do everything with our phone these days. Just look how AI is taking over everything right now as we speak. So if everybody can have access to stocks, and if Hood, you got to admit, they offer a very good user interface and user exchange, very simplistic, clear and concise, and it allows people to get into options trading, and understand options without being, they're very technical, without being that advanced of a trader. Beginners can come in, learn a lot of information, and a lot of them are using Robinhood. So we'll see what happens. But nonetheless, a breakout here could possibly happen, or you could see a pullback here, possibly consolidating in the mid-60s. Looking at other things we've been looking at, CoreWeave, that we know has just been on an absolute run. Nebius, MBIS, which is kind of doing the same thing, bringing kind of that cloud infrastructure, but looking more in terms of the European side of things. Tempest had the big short report, came down from that 65 back to the 50s here. We'll see if we see it pop up there. And looking at some of the other stocks, just going to come with time. But personally, I think we're going to see a little bit of shakiness coming through here. But after that meeting with Trump, the Chinese president, I think we're still going to continue bullish. So personally, I'm still keeping a bullish perspective. Peace out, take care, and I'll catch you guys later.